Today's episode of This Week in Startups is brought to you by SnapTerms, online legal protection made simple. Visit snapterms.com and enter the code TWIST to receive 10% off. And by Walker Corporate Law, a boutique law firm specializing in the representation of entrepreneurs. Visit them at walkercorporatelaw.com.
Hey everybody, it's Jason Calacanis, and we have an excellent episode of This Week in Startups for you. Liz Gannes, who did the amazing coverage at Recode of the Ellen Pao and Kleiner Perkins trial, talks with us for an hour about what this trial means for Silicon Valley. Matt Mazzeo, who works with Chris Sacca at Lowercase Capital, joins us. It's an amazing discussion. It's an important discussion. Stay tuned.
That's what it's all about, man. They said money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. We ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you. Yeah, money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. Yeah, we ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you.
Hey everybody, welcome to This Week in Startups. We're back with the news Roundtable edition. If you want to follow the show, it's TWI Startups on the Instagram and the Twitter. I'm at Jason, your host. And on the show, which we've been doing now for 6 years, we do it's been a long time. I'm exhausted. It's enough of this show already. Thank you. And so my guests today on the news Roundtable are Matt Mazzeo.
Kiss up in chief.
What's that?
Oh, I was talking about his $30 haircut before.
Oh, $30 haircut.
Sure
All right, guys. It's a professional show here. Matt Mazzeo is here. Everybody knows Matt Mazzeo works at Lowercase Capital, is partners with Mr. Chris Sacca, the greatest angel investor of all time now, it seems, with that huge $1.5 billion fund. How has life changed since the cover story and news got out about the $8 million fund turning into $1.x billion?
How has life changed? I don't think it's changed much at all, frankly. I think it's kind of been the exact same. People that sort of have been following Chris and the fund and what we've been working on kind of have an inkling of what we've been working on and how it's been going. And so we generally, for the most part, have kept that heads down until one of our LPs, I think had leaked some of those numbers not long ago. And so it got out maybe in a more public way, but in the circles that we are all kind of
no difference.
Hanging, pretty much the same.
And is Chris working at all? Because every time I see Chris on Instagram, it's like he's on a snowcat, he's on Merc, he's on Periscope with a snowcat.
Yeah, you know what's funny? It's like
I don't know where
there's this theme, Italy. I think, that mostly comes from people who, from other funds who are like, oh, Chris has stepped out entirely and retired. And he said very publicly that he's not doing day-to-day ops on the fund. But they're like, oh, he's left SF. What they don't realize, I think, is that Chris kind of left SF right after he left Google, created his own workflow, moved to Truckee in Manhattan Beach, split his time between the two. And so to call Chris retiring, I mean, he still sits on a couple boards. In the last month, he was cover of Forbes. He did CNBC. He keynoted your conference.
Yeah, with Tony Hawk. It was great.
Periscopes office hours a few times a week.
Yeah.
Deal flow is still crazy.
So he just works remote is what it basically is.
So, I mean, to call it retire, if that's retirement, sign me up for retire. The guy's probably working harder than most people I know. And so it just doesn't feel like work because this is what he does. These are his friends.
This is what I understand.
Yeah.
This is my understanding of the situation.
Ooh.
You do the first round of meetings. You're like the front line. So to get to Sacca now, you got to get through Matt Mazzeo.
For early stage stuff, that's kind of how it ended up working, over the last couple of years. I just love doing that stuff.
So if I introduce somebody to Chris, does that mean now you're taking the meeting?
Probably.
I'm kind of insulted now. This is crazy.
Why is that
it's
insulting?
Not that I'm insulted that you're doing it, but I have this issue where if I introduce somebody to Chris, he's got to take the meeting.
Not always. Yeah, I mean, he jumps in on some. There's some that he's just I've been looking for this forever and I want to do it. And otherwise, it's I just love doing it. And so he kind of lets me run with it.
Do the first meeting.
Yeah. Right, and we just that's kind of how the partnership has worked out.
Well, welcome to the program, by the way. This is the first time you're on the program.
Yeah. I've been watching for a while, but it's good to be here.
And also Liz Gannes is with us. You know her because she...
Oh, wait, hold on, pause. Sacca or Sacca?
I call it Sacca.
Sacca.
Okay, all right.
Sacca.
Yeah, Mazzeo and Sacca, not
Sacca.
Mazzeo and Sacca.
Okay, good. All
yes.
Right. Gannes as in brains.
Gannes as in brains. We all got it. Calacanis as in Calacanis. Liz Gannes is with us, and my God, I just want to tell you, journalist to journalist, or former half journalist, whatever the hell I am, what a great job you and Nellie did on covering the Ellen Pao trial.
Thank you.
What was that like? You were almost there, I think, start to finish, right?
Yeah.
Did you
much.
miss any time, or?
Yes. There was only one journalist, I think, who was there every single second, and that was Davy Alba from Wired. So shout out to her. But Nellie and I pretty quickly realized that you miss the day and you kind of miss all the context for everything. And not that we have to tell you every single thing that happens, but the little important bits are really wound up in lots of unimportant everything else that you also have to understand to be able to bring the story forward.
Is this the first time you've done court reporting like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as 10 years in blogging, I've never spent that much time on a single topic ever. And so for me, it was actually really cool to go deep on something and know everything about it. And I don't think we would have invested that much time if we weren't getting the same response that we were getting. Like, people were reading it and really interested, and that just fed on itself. And I think, skipping forward to the lesson from it all is like, win or lose, that trial kept a sustained discussion going.
Yes.
And I think that for us, the journalistic opportunity was in kind of what's new today? What's new today? And I mean, it was easy journalism. It was like, show up and they will put on a show for you.
Yeah, it was like a live job. It was live blogging a Steve Jobs keynote in a way.
Yeah. I mean, we were not hunting down the little tidbits. They were presented to us on a platter. But we were there absorbing it and using both our ability to just think of to put it into a story, and also just like our experience in the industry to actually put it into context, which lacks in court reporting.
It's kind of amazing that you like with the 24-hour news cycle that's happening today. That sustained over weeks, and the conversation got deeper and more engaged. You got more voices around, and people I think that normally wouldn't have jumped into like a contentious debate or a challenging debate like that actually found moments to jump in and interject. And I thought that was like fascinating that it extended over and I mean, you wrote your mansplaining piece on it.
Well, let me interrupt you, Liz.
I was not talking. You don't get the right to interrupt me.
I'm just taking back all these words. I took back mansplaining.
I don't know if you want to take back
you're
mansplaining.
You're taking them back from...
I took mansplaining back from the feminists.
Oh, got it.
The feminists were kept telling me stop mansplaining, stop mansplaining.
So now you are a mansplainer.
And then I was like, okay, I'm just taking it back. I'm owning it. It's
mansplain away.
No, I don't. I'm actually, one thing I'm really interested in just on the journalist beat, because we're going to spend, just so if people are annoyed by this whole conversation or tired of it, we're going to spend like 20 minutes on Ellen Pao for the first half of the show, because it's a very important issue and just fascinating. But I want to ask you something as a journalist and as just a person, because none of us, I don't think, have spent any time in a courtroom like this.
Yeah.
Is there something about the courtroom experience that was different or surprised you in some large way, actually seeing a trial take place from beginning to end?
Yes.
And coming out of it, do you feel more, proud or confident in the American justice system or less? And you can take those in whichever order you like.
Yeah. So I had been to the entire duration of one previous case, which was a armed robbery spree for which I was on the jury about 8 years ago. And my experience with that, by the way, can I just delve into that for a second? Because it's actually cool.
Of course.
So,
Go right to the microphone.
The deal was there was an 18-year-old and some of his underage friends, and there were 4 of them, and they were in a 2-door car, and they committed 3 armed robberies. And that was kind of, established. But the question is, who committed the robberies? And if you are either the person who held the gun or the person who opened the door for someone to get out from the back, then you're the accessory to the robbery, which is the same crime, right? So for me, actually, and maybe this is kind of ridiculous, I thought it was really interesting to figure out who could have been in which seat at which time, which we didn't know. And so for each count, it was like, could this guy that we're trying, because we're not trying everyone else, have been the person who committed it? And ultimately, we found him guilty on all of it, except for some little sub-counts.
So you were doing one of the 4 people?
Yes, we were only trying one of the 4 people. But anyway, so that was my jury experience. And I think in that experience, it was like, we're taking it seriously, but really, can we get out of the room? Can we get done with this? And as compared to the Ellen Pao trial, the Kleiner Perkins, they were the ones on trial, I guess is a better way to say it. But Ellen Pao is kind of the center of it all.
She initiated it. Yep.
Yeah. But the jury there was crazy responsible. I mean, they were being paid $17 a day for 5 weeks to sit and listen to VCs complain about each other.
Right.
And they took it seriously, and they did a good job.
So you feel better about the justice system now than you did even going into it?
Yeah, I was impressed.
Okay, so where to go next on this? What do you think is the important thing coming out of this trial? Is it, how do we separate Ellen Pao, the individual, from the 6% of VCs who are female issue, right? These are two separate issues.
Yeah.
So let's tackle each one independent of each other. This trial and Ellen Pao's reasons for doing it. Her public stance is she did this to create a dialogue. Do you actually believe that that was her goal, or do you think her goal was the financial issues that were not allowed in from her husband or I don't know if it's ex-husband or husband who's had all the financial problems? What do you think her actual motivation was, having watched her? Because we can all speculate what we think, but you watched her testify and you watched her being cross-examined. What did you get the sense of? And what do you think the jury got the sense of?
So the question that is, what is her motivation now? I absolutely believe that her motivation now is that there's a real issue around women in the workplace and bias, and she has pushed that conversation forward, and she's been successful in that. And then the question is kind of like, in the lead up to this case, did her motivations change? And so the defense perspective was like, she never did anything demonstrable at Kleiner Perkins to have women in tech events. She never did anything to mentor younger women. So why is this suddenly her issue? I don't hold that against her. I feel like, you can be the same person in multiple instances and act differently and have different motivations, and that doesn't mean you're a bad person, right? Like, I'm generally a confident person, but there are some things that would totally throw me off my game, and that doesn't mean that I'm inconsistent and unbelievable on that point. It just means I'm sensitive to it.
Right. And there's no perfect victims, as like a lot of people were sort of pointing out. Do you think the fact that she seems unlikable or cold, which I heard a lot of people sort of saying, and actually came across in some of people's reviews of her, which, by the way, I mean, a lot of people in this industry are kind of cold and unlikable. I mean, it kind of like correlates with success, doesn't it? But do you think that played into it?
That's not illegal, right?
Yeah, not really. So do you think that played into it with the jury's decision? Or do you think the jury just did it based on the facts? Was there something unlikable about her?
So I wasn't in the jury room, right? I've interviewed some of the jurors who were there, and they said that they tried to, as much as possible, restrict themselves to performance reviews. So we had a whole month of testimony about office affairs and other people's business and all this kind of stuff. And they said, who said what on a plane ride about porn stars,
Or Playboy.
And the Playboy Mansion, yes.
Oh, was it porn stars? I thought it was Playboy. That's
both.
Okay.
Presumably, I don't know. Yeah. Allegedly is the word. Yeah. But yeah, I think what it came down to, what they said is they put up on the walls of their deliberation room, like, every single performance review of Ellen Pao and the three men who were promoted at that time, who are Chiwa Chen, Wen Shea, and Amol Deshpande. So they were kind of like her cohort. Yeah. And they put them all up and they said, what changed over time? Were the same terms used negatively for her and positively for men, which is what her team had argued. And they concluded that the men who received negative feedback had actually made improvements, and her negative feedback was consistent, and so therefore she did not deserve this promotion that she said she deserved.
Got it.
And I think what's problematic about that is that reviews are written by people who may or may not have bias.
Right, sure.
And
I mean, reviews are almost universally thought of as a kind of a joke. Like, they really don't mean anything today.
So I think that's kind of where you have to come to, right? Yeah. So I think that it's a totally believable explanation that these jurors use that as their standard, right? But think about reviews in your own life, right? And so we actually had the craziest joke that I learned about how courts operate is that there are these people called expert witnesses who get paid as much as $900 an hour to get on the stand and say things that are totally in favor of the side that's paying them $900 an hour.
It's ridiculous.
And so there was one guy who had gotten up and actually I can't remember if it was a woman or a man, but there was one person who had gotten up and said, this style of review, which is called a 360 review, which is like
your superiors and your subordinates and your peers review you. I think it's a 360.
Yeah. I think it's like it's some kind of a established term.
It is
for larger
like
companies.
Harvard Business School like device to review people. It's supposed to be peer reviewed and up and down. So I think you can also review the reviewer kind of thing.
So this witness said that there is zero chance of bias creeping into that system because it is a perfect system. And that's where I'm like,
Spit your
no.
coffee out. All right. When we get back from commercial break, I want to talk about the other side of the case, which is Kleiner Perkins, and this unbelievable creep who was at the firm who was trying to knock down another partner's door in a bathrobe, and who Ellen had an affair with, and then Randy Komazar with the book of poetry, and the actual stuff that seemed very legitimate, like harassment, and why that didn't play in when we get back from this break. Hey, it's hard to segue from this kind of stuff, but it actually is litigation related. Thanks to Snap Terms for sponsoring the program and reducing costly litigation on websites. Yes, you can go get a simple, affordable, and fast way to protect your website by having a proper terms of service. Just go to snapterms.com and use the promo code TWISH. You get 10% off, and they will do your terms of service for $299. Matt, you know about this, right? You have startups getting sued, all these ambulance chasing, we're now website chasing attorneys. Actually, it's a big New York Times story about the guy who's doing all the privacy stuff.
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
On Sunday, yeah.
Do you guys know about that?
Oh, no.
I didn't read it yet, but he's
I
just
read it, and it was like the most hated man in Silicon Valley, and I was like, who is this guy? This is interesting.
Yeah, and he's just like, it wasn't me, right?
It was
like,
some lawyer from Chicago.
Got my title.
It's also a theme in the new Silicon Valley series, or season 2 of Silicon Valley. Yeah.
Nice.
Ah, really? Of getting chased by patent trolls or something?
Sort of,
yeah. So anyway.
No spoilers.
Sorry.
No spoilers, please. Snapterms.com will get you a terms of service for $299 and a privacy policy. This keeps coming up with a lot of the companies I invest in. It happens with your companies. You get dragged into this. And you can avoid it all by just going to snapterms.com, and you'll get 10% off with the promo code TWIST. Thanks again. You can thank @SnapTerms on your Twitter handle. Okay, so let's go to Kleiner. And Matt, I'm going to bring you into this in a second, but we got the expert here, and I want to get all this information.
And I've been reading a lot of your coverage. It's been incredible. So
now, let me ask you a question, Matt, while we're in this.
Yeah.
As a white male, venture capitalist.
You boxing me in right now?
I boxed you in.
Okay.
I'm in the same box. The big box, actually, on a statistical basis when it comes to funds. Did you feel like you should comment on it on Twitter? And did you comment on it, or did you lay back? Because people are going to do a search right now of your Twitter handles. Just
I retweeted one thing Chris said, which was around like the important thing is that we're now having a dialogue around it.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like I followed it closely enough or had a deep enough understanding of the true facts to give a perspective on the case itself. I do think the issue is important to have a discussion around, and I've had a lot of those conversations with friends and founders, and thinking about what is ultimately a very challenging issue, not just around gender inequality in this ecosystem, but around inequality around a bunch of other minorities in this ecosystem.
Right.
And so, I think it sparked an incredibly important debate that has extended for me long beyond the news of the trial and that. So
okay, so let's get back to the. What do you? Did you try to get people to comment on the record about it, like venture capitalists and folks, or did everybody just be like, "Hey, no comment. I don't want to get involved in this"?
There was a lot of no comment. I don't want to get involved. And I also,
why do you think?
I can absolutely respect that you say you wanted more facts, but I think that wanting more facts has not stopped most discussion on the internet.
No.
So I think that sometimes people just use that.
Well said, actually.
If you can remember, like a week before the trial started, there was this whole like Vivek Wadhwa explosion.
Oh my God.
Everyone had an opinion about that, and then suddenly it's like we're talking about something that actually happened. That's
in that case, though, I don't think a lot of men had an opinion on the Vivek Wadhwa thing. Mm-hmm. I mean, I came out and said some things, but I think.
Okay, so maybe that's a bad example, but I'm saying.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of women had a lot to say about it and about him.
Right. But ultimate mansplaining incident.
Yeah, for sure. And my perception of this is. It's just too brutal, and there's so much downside as a white man in talking about it. And I have had a bunch of people lecture me, like I don't want to say mentors, but people who are superior to me in career, like decade more career, and they're just like, "Why do you bother?
Why do you get into these?
Why do you talk?" And I'm like, I don't know. I kind of like to talk. I like to talk about issues, and I'm not saying I'm superior to anybody talking or not talking about it, but I do think that there's a culture now that anytime a man joins this dialogue, there's a contingent, and I think it's a small contingent, but they're very vocal and they're relentless, that just hammer them as hard as they can. And they make it very personal. And with Vivek, he might have faults, but they made it really personal to try to, I think, destroy him. And I think, what do you think of all that?
I think that there should be, I think that playing an ally or a mentor is an important role. For me, from my perspective, it seemed like he was overstepping a lot there to become like, how do you declare yourself really an expert on women in technology, an academic expert on something, right? Like
Do studies?
Yeah, I mean, well, I think that there was a gap between what he was, the pedestal he was standing on and what was making that pedestal.
Yeah, people felt he got too much credit and was cited too much. And I agree with that.
But I think that, I would never fault you for speaking out on an issue, but I do think that your confidence in speaking out comes from a place of privilege. And so when people are fighting back against you, like you've earned that privilege, or you have that privilege, so fight back, speak up for yourself and keep talking, right? But
I just don't shut up. Yeah, that's my strategy is just a strategy. And I don't know if it's privilege as much as just where I grew up and how I grew up, which was you never back down. If you're engaged in a fight or a dialogue, like the second you back down or get silent, that's when you get jumped. Yeah. So I just learned to never shut up in Brooklyn, because the second you shut up, someone punches you in the face. Like, it's perceived as weakness. So it's probably just a weird character trait that I have.
No, I think actually it would be productive for the world if you opened up a school of learning to have as much self-confidence as Jason Calacanis.
Well, I think thank you.
No, it is. I'm trying to say a compliment somewhere.
Yeah, no,
you asked me a question at some point.
I don't care about people's opinion of me, which is a double-edged sword, I think. I've learned to listen a little bit
But I think
more.
it's really hard to teach self-confidence.
Perhaps, yeah. Getting your ass kicked really, surviving a couple of ass kickings works. But let's get into Kleiner Perkins.
Okay.
Because I think people are very reticent to actually bring up their faults because they're so powerful, especially if you're an investor. Like I'm an investor now. But I have to say, Randy Komisar and this other guy, Ajit is his name? Is that right?
Yeah, Ajit Nazare.
Okay, Ajit is a complete scumbag, piece of garbage. He tried to push Trey's door in to get into her hotel room. Is that the testimony? In a bathrobe or something?
Yeah, he tried to hit on her really inappropriately.
Well, I mean, but it seemed like a little bit more like...
Like fearing for her safety?
If you go to a woman's hotel room...
It's not
at
cool.
night, and you try to barge in. Yeah. To me, that's kind of called the cops' territory. And the fact that Trey didn't call the cops, I think, I guess she didn't want to make a huge deal of it, but that to me, seemed so aggressive and predatory. But I guess women deal with this, do they not?
Yeah, neither of us was there, so right. I don't know how dangerous it seemed in the moment. Certainly, it was completely. Completely not okay for someone to do that.
Right.
And especially not a colleague who has any kind of power in that situation. Right. Yeah. What's your question?
Okay, and then going on to Randy Komisar, he gave this book of erotic poetry and or whatever. Did you feel that he was actually trying to have hit on Ellen Pao?
I don't know.
Because that really never seemed clear to me.
Yeah, that never seemed clear. And she and actually I think she said that she wasn't quite sure either. So I think that you can only use that example in that it added to the pile of kind of weird innuendo. But if you look at the book, I bought the book. I gave it to Nellie actually as a present.
So Kara Swisher, be prepared. We have another suit coming. I'm going to be an expert witness.
Nellie as a gift.
I did.
That is hilarious.
Gotta have a sense of humor in there somewhere.
It's pretty funny, actually.
So it had. So I looked at it before I gave it to her. Not too much because I wanted to kind of replicate this. No, it has some poems in it that could absolutely be perceived as suggestive there, but it's not like a sex poetry book.
Right. It's Leonard Cohen, right?
It's Leonard Cohen. It has some naked woman picture sketches in it, and it has some kind of like poem, I don't know.
Poetry art book. So
poems that like you should only give it to someone who you think would not think it crosses a line, right? Like if we are together in a poetry discussion group,
sure,
maybe you
totally
give this
allowable.
Over. Right. I don't know where that line is.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how egregious that particular incident was, and I don't think that really was established in court.
So do you think there was, having gone through all this, a culture at Kleiner? Because this is what I hear on the inside, and I wrote about this a little bit. I hear two camps. One is there's a dysfunctional culture at Kleiner, or there was, where it was like a frat, whatever. No human resources really. Nobody was being trained.
Definitely ding them on that.
Yeah, no human resources. And then you have one clear predator. Then you have maybe Randy's a predator or not. Nobody can tell. It's kind of on the borderline. And then there was another group who was like, listen, John Doerr's a great guy who took a chance on a lot of female partners, and he actually did more. He had a larger percentage of female partners than anybody, and then he got dragged into all of this unfairly.
Okay, so first of all, you don't take a chance on female partners. You hire people who are qualified.
I agree. This is not my words. This is what people in the industry have said behind closed doors. Is like, he was the first firm to really
right. So the only reason there is a woman to have a lawsuit against Kleiner Perkins is because a woman worked at Kleiner Perkins, which is untrue of all these other firms, right?
Correct. Right. Yeah. I mean, this is the issue I think people don't want to talk about.
I think the issue that people don't want to talk about is how you create a healthy workplace environment when you don't have numbers that are anywhere equal representing to the population. How do you, it's one thing to make a comfortable environment for people who are actual minorities, but women are not actual minorities, right? No, women are just completely underrepresented in this.
Right.
So, and I think that's where we get to this area of like what could have been a legal precedent in this case is not this stuff about whether or not Randy Komisar's gift was inappropriate, right? The stuff, I actually, maybe this plays into it. So all I'm saying is there is subtle and sometimes egregious discrimination that happens against women.
Yeah.
And I do think that happened at Kleiner Perkins. I don't know that it was proven in court.
Right.
But I do think that it happens all over the place.
Unconscious bias?
Unconscious bias is exactly where I'm going with this. So yeah. So I think that when you have, I cannot believe that they had a healthy workplace environment.
Right.
When it looked nothing like a healthy any place environment.
You know what I think the two things that I thought were particularly egregious was the ski trip and the Al Gore dinner.
The all-men events.
I thought that was insane. And I thought that when I heard those things, that's when I thought, hey, she's going to win.
Yeah.
And did you think at some point she was going to win something? And because I felt like at that point, like she's got them dead to rights now, because she was excluded specifically, and other women were excluded from. And they had the email like, yeah, we don't have the rooms in Aspen to bring women. And it was like, I think there's a couple more rooms in Aspen somewhere. Like, you can get a hotel room down the hall.
I don't know. I mean, maybe you guys live in this crazy investor world where, like, it's your work responsibility to create a male bonding ski trip in Aspen. Like, what is that? Like,
when we get back from commercial break, I'm going to have Matt answer that. And let me thank Scott Walker of the Walker Corporate Law Group, who has been a champion of startups, and he has a boutique law firm that specializes in the representation of entrepreneurs and startups. I have sent him dozens and dozens of startups, and he treats them all the exact same way, which is the way I treat them, extremely well, and give them the most precious thing, which is time. He gives all these startups time, and he does it on the arm, which is really, he's a super mensch. All of his attorneys have 10 to 20 years experience. There's no junior associates getting on the job training. They do mergers and acquisitions, licensing, company formation, terms of service, all the privacy policy, blah, blah, blah. You know all the stuff they do. But what they do that's really unique is flat rate pricing, so you don't get that crazy sticker shock when you get the PDF from your attorney. You know that, Matt. Getting that PDF, you have to open it up and you're like, oh.
True.
Scott at WalkerCorporateLaw.com. Scott at WalkerCorporateLaw.com. Yes, he gives out his personal email, and just put Jason in the subject line, and he will open it, and he will treat you.
Do you get a referral on that?
I don't, but you know what the thing is? When I was starting This Week in Startups, he came to every event.
That's awesome.
And then we didn't have ads initially, and then he's like, hey, can we support and give ads? I was like, sure, I'll read an ad for you. But he's got so many people who speak highly of him. He's been with the program for 5 or 6 years. 415-979-9998. 415-979-9998. And I only read ads, by the way, Matt, for the program if we use the product.
Cool.
I don't need the money. I don't need the ads. I just do it if we use the product. We turned down the e-cigarettes. I had like literally a 6-figure e-cigarette deal.
Why?
Because I don't smoke e-cigarettes.
Yeah.
No, why do they want to sponsor you? Sorry.
Well, because the poker thing,
Brooklyn,
and then the show, and because they're printing money, and they just want to throw money around, and they want to get, I don't know, tech execs. Anyway, so what's with the banging drums, white guys in VC firms, running around in nature, trying to bond with each other? Matt, please explain this insane behavior.
I don't work in one of those funds. You're talking to me, and it's just Chris and I, so it's kind of hard for me to extrapolate. It'd be hard to.
Are you guys banging on drums in the woods, like running around?
Yeah,
bonding?
Totally unrelated, but we have a pretty good drum circle going. It's a two-man drum circle, but yeah. I don't know. I can't speak to it.
It's very foreign, right? I mean,
it's hard for me to understand. We have we go to a bunch of retreats. We go to a bunch of LP events. We go to a bunch of other conferences. I see whoever they invite, and it seems to be a distribution there. Yeah. That's not unlike most of the tech events, like when I go to launch or anywhere else. And so I'm not planning a lot of those dinners or retreats, or we're kind of just two people going out and investing.
I could explain it, Liz. And I tried to explain a little bit in my piece when I mansplained the Ellen Pao trial, which is I got recruited pretty hard by a couple of these firms when I started doing angel investing and hit a couple of unicorns. And they really wanted me to be a partner. And I was like, I kind of like delved in it a little bit, like, hey, maybe this is interesting. Like, these are big firms, like, kind of grew up hearing their names. Yeah. I wouldn't say which ones. And they wanted to spend an inordinate amount of time hanging out and bonding with me. And I got through this process, and I was like, you know what? I don't enjoy this. Yeah. I don't want to be part of this, like, fraternity. And I was never a fraternity guy. I thought fraternities were stupid. When my friends would join fraternities, I was like, wait, you really need that to fit in? Like, just be yourself. Like, why do you need to define yourself by these things? Like, be your own person. And I said I don't want to. I basically politely declined being a partner at one of these firms, and it would have been economically insane for me. But I think they have this idea that because all they do is like pick these bets and they try to help these companies grow, there needs to be this extraordinary level of trust. When you have these discussions of like, okay, should we invest in Google or Uber or Twitter? And then you say, no, I don't think so. And then he says, yes, I think we should. And then I'm the arbiter. And then I got to be the thumbs down or the thumbs up. And then we all know from that meeting who said no and turned down the Twitter deal and cost the firm, $1 billion. And then we were going to chop up the $200 million in carry from that 5 ways. And we each would have got $40 million. And Liz was the one who said, don't do it. And we listened to her. It's awkward. It's like you have to have this like crazy trust, like a sports team. And they operate, I believe, like sports teams. Or like book clubs. They don't operate like companies. They operate like packs of social clubs. And I think if you look at like an Andreessen Horowitz now, and I don't know if they have more women or minorities or what. No, they don't. But they are trying to run it more like a company. So I think they gave everybody the partner title, and now they have 10 people in marketing, 10 people in human resources.
Right, but
based on the CAA model.
Based on the CAA model. In fact, Ovitz went there to design it for them.
But whatever their top title is, like general partner or whatever, that's only dudes.
But they're building a business, like a company structure, not 6 people. And just as like, here's our operating agreement, and then everybody go collect their $2 million in fees a year.
Okay, but here's what I don't get. And
I'm not saying this is right, but this is what I've observed on how they operate.
So I'm not an investor. I don't want to be an investor, right?
Right.
But I don't get the point. Like, it just seems like so much of it is so random. These people live this incredibly high-flying, well-paid lifestyle. Yeah. They're expected to have a lot of what they do fail, and then they just build up this culture of like, it's so high stakes, it's so high, personality-driven partnership, blah, blah, blah. I mean, You're talking about like the way that you guys run your firm, skiing it on the beach and whatever, and like you can, like it's about the relationships that you build, right? Like it's about
the whole business is relationships, right?
Yeah. Right. And so why does it have to be that way? Like I don't know. Is that the only way to run this business? I came out of this trial kind of thinking like, what is the point of venture capital? Like these people make such a big deal about the way that they run their operations, and it just seems kind of Like there must be surely like, some kind of
there's like a tradition.
vanguard
I think there's
could come in and like just
there's
take
a tradition,
them out.
and I think you have people changing it. Like I think to Matt and Chris's credit, they run it differently.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, but it's also but it's because you guys ultimately you have people trust you because you're good guys, right? Who do good,
one would hope,
who
Reputation.
are fun to hang out with and have friends
and
like,
hope
right?
that we have a little bit of insight and work our butts up. Yeah, but there's a bunch
but
of
also
reasons.
like people are choosing to work with
Totally.
you guys because there's an allure to the way that you live your lifestyle.
No,
I wouldn't say it's an allure to the way we work our lifestyle.
It's more track record. I think if you have I think sometimes they pick it based on track record. That's why you see so many operators
You're
becoming
saying why
VC.
do people pick our firm?
And then some of it's network, and some of it is like, hey, this is like a good person I want to spend 7 years
it's how
building
we
the
spend
business
time like getting to know us a little bit.
Yeah.
We invested a lot with other firms that we've worked with, people that we've known for a long period of time.
Yeah.
And a lot of it comes through referrals of people that trust us, and like, we have to create a good narrative for why we are valuable to that business, and often we're tested on that, and the second time that entrepreneur comes back to us. And,
Yeah, it's just that the way that all these systems work, it's like in time they become more and more ingrained, and that means that the rich get richer and the people who are already in it do well, right? And the people who already are in it are not people who are representative of the rest of the world.
That may be true, but I will say it's changed dramatically since I got in the game. So there was no way, Jason Calacanis or, I don't know, Kevin Rose or anybody like that was ever becoming an angel investor or anything like that.
Chris Sacca.
Or Chris Sacca even. You had to go to business school. You had to have like fraternity brothers who had a firm, and you went in there because you were either, whoever's son, or you went to a business school. Now, all those business school people are not getting the slots in VC firms. You have to be an operator. And I think Benchmark and Andreessen Horowitz are all operators now. They won't hire like an MBA. They might hire them to be like an analyst or something, but they would never hire them because you know why? The entrepreneurs want entrepreneurs as investors. That's why you see Ryan Sarver.
I think that's a story that people tell themselves, but in reality, like the people who are at the top of those firms who have been there for 20 years fit a different profile. That's the trendy thing to do now is say you have an I'm not an expert on the venture capital business, but it seems like it's ripe for disruption based on my inside view of sitting and listening to how Kleiner Perkins operates.
I think you're correct. You are correct that it is, and it is being disrupted. I mean, I think if you look at all these, the syndicates on AngelList, that's super disruptive. I think if you look at someone like Chris, or you look at the micro VCs, they're super disruptive. And then you look at Andreessen Horowitz, while it might not be disruptive on a gender basis or a race basis, it is very disruptive on that they're not taking any of the carry and living that highfalutin lifestyle. They put it all into services for the entrepreneurs, and that has totally freaked me out.
So they get paid differently? How does that work?
Well,
they don't take the net.
They don't take that carry.
Well, they do make profits when their fund does.
For sure, but a lot of the other VC firms take this 3% management
fee. You mean
they don't take the fees, right? So they take the they take the carry.
They don't take fee.
But they hire rich partners who've already been successful in life.
And is that the way that everyone works now? So people were telling me this, but I don't know who is the old guard and who is the new guard and who takes this. So the question here is, do you get paid no matter whether you succeed or fail? And that's the old model.
Yeah.
For most funds, you get paid a management fee and then carry. So in the typical venture capital structure, you have 2% per year for assets under management within the fund to manage the fund. In theory, that goes to some combination of office space and travel and events, and then salaries. Often those salaries, in addition to that, you have carry. So after you pay back your fund and the fees, you get paid on the difference back. And
so if you had to guess, like, is it just Andreessen and a couple other firms that do it this new way?
Well, Sequoia was the one who pioneered this.
Okay.
So Sequoia had like a human capital department and a marketing department.
No, but I'm just asking the question of firms that don't take net fee. Is that
the management
50%?
Yeah. The people still take it, but how you deploy it is the question. Right. So let's say
are you deploying it to my salary, or are you deploying it to a structure that helps support entrepreneurs?
The three of us start a firm today. It's $1 billion under management. Do we take that 2% a year, $20 million, and take $5 million each and put $5 million
by the way, it's not 2% total. It's 2% every year for 10 years.
Every year. But remember, that comes out of the 20% carry.
Regardless of whether you return that fund. You do have to pay that fund back. And so the real real money that is earned in most venture capital is against the carry, the often 20% or more in some cases that you return back to the fund. The question is around deployment of those fees, either to pockets of the venture capitalists as they manage it, regardless of whether they win. If you, and this is like the VC death spiral, right? As you get bigger and bigger funds, because this is pressure to continue to raise larger funds, get more management fee, and it stacks often. So you raise a fund every few years, and so you can be taking 2% on multiple funds over the period of time.
Right.
Or do you deploy that to a structure like Andreessen has done, or First Round has done, where you put operating partners under you who are experts in hiring and management and whatever else the case may be.
Yeah. And so these things also have, 10-year arcs? And so what I think you're having happen now is this 10-year arc of, the industry is starting to change. Like I'm seeing so many female founders now. In the last launch incubator class, 5 of the 7 companies had female founders. And we didn't optimize for that. We optimize our whole organization for being inclusive. Like we really work on inclusiveness on the show. Like we have, and at the events, we basically say we want to triple or quadruple the stats that like Twitter and Google release in terms of our diversity stats on the program and at the events, right? So we really optimize for that. But it's just happening naturally. We're seeing so many more female founders now and minority founders. It's fantastic.
3 out of 6 of our last, just anecdotally, we haven't done like an analysis of it, have been female founders.
And it's, the thing is, it's not tokenism. Like I am.
Oh, they're killers. They're absolute.
I think the women who do start companies, because I think there is this unconscious bias. They are held to a higher standard
maybe
by the world, I think, on an unconscious bias basis. So therefore, they over-deliver. And they're just much more serious. I see like a level of entitlement. I don't know if you see the same thing in the market. A level of entitlement from male founders now, where they just expect that they're going to be, whoever famous founder. And then female founders, like one of them said it to me in confidence, like, I won't say her name, but she said, Jason, because I was talking to her, having a frank discussion about this, and she said, you know what? If I don't make this work, I'm not sure I'll ever get funded again. I have to make this work. Whereas these young guy entrepreneurs are like, yeah, whatever happens, what happens,
So what do you think, if you can agree with me that there is unconscious bias?
Oh, of course there is.
What do you think people should be doing? Like how do you make this trial, which was ultimately unsuccessful, how do you make that discussion?
I want to know what you think of. That's actually the question I wanted to ask you, which is, I want to hear your answer. I'm talking too much. I want to hear.
How do you fix unconscious bias?
Yeah.
No, where do we go now in the industry?
Yeah, what should be taken from this?
Well, you spent all this time there. Tell us your review first.
Well, I think that one of the places I'm interested in this going is to have more people kind of be able to share their stories without repercussions. Because I think that what Ellen Pao did was she made herself a magnet for criticism.
For sure.
And maybe that leaves some opening for other people to. I mean, it sucks to admit that your partner came and knocked on your hotel room door in their bathroom. Like, no one wants that to be their reputation, right?
Yeah.
To be like the helpless girl who got approached by their predatory partner. And I wonder if like in the small examples and the large examples can be more. People can feel more open to share those because there is that conversation has been started. On the flip side, I think on the like inclusivity of hiring and senior partner levels and stuff like that, I'm really interested to see where that goes. I mean, I hear a lot of common excuses, and I plan conferences. I go through some of this stuff myself.
It's hard,
right?
You have a hard time. Getting
so
female
I'm not going to say
right?
that that's like a crappy excuse. We can't find any female speakers. Like it is hard because because the same women are asked to do everything.
Right.
And they end up having to fly this flag for their entire gender. And that sucks.
Yeah,
they also need to go do work.
They need to get work done. I have the same experience. Now let me ask you a difficult question as a conference, because you do conference stuff. Will you lower the bar in terms of title to be inclusive? In other words, if you can't get the CEO, would you take the VP of X in order to hit your diversity targets?
We have and we do, but I think it's not necessarily title driven as much as there's kind of like a inner circle of people who are asked to every conference.
Right.
And there are companies outside that circle. So for instance, the last conference I programmed was our Code Mobile event in October. And like no one had previously asked the CEO or the executive director, I'm not sure exactly what her title is, of Wikipedia. The head of Wikipedia is a woman.
Right.
And she's not on the short list of like, we didn't get Sheryl Sandberg, we didn't get Marissa Mayer, you know?
Yeah.
But she oversees like the 5th most visited website in the world.
Yeah, we got to have her on the program, yeah. I think that's an interesting solution. We actually have had, this is, I think, one of the big challenges is Lila Tretikov.
Yeah, Lila Tretikov, yeah.
Lila Tretikov, yeah.
Yeah.
It is the big issue. And, you know, Freda Kapoor spoke at one of my events, and we had a deep discussion about this very issue of like, you know, are you lowering the bar? Because every time we do that, we get called out on that as well. Like, oh, you put this VP up there with the CEOs, you're lowering the bar, right? Like I get this like jerk contingent of guys who attack me about that, right? Or when we ask for people for suggestions for, you know, to increase diversity, I literally get attacked for that too. Not that I care, but, and what I realized was it's not lowering the bar in my mind. I don't look at it that way anymore. The way I look at it now is we need to have more examples of people getting it done on the stages, the important stages, whether it's this podcast or your event or whatever. And if we get more people on stage so people can see, hey, there's an African-American founder. Hey, there's a Hispanic
founder. You're talking about role models. And I think role models are probably the single most powerful thing in this situation.
It's so critical. And I really regret in the first, maybe when I was in my 20s when I ran an event, I was just like, if we don't get the CEO, we don't want you. And I would just say that because CEOs would want to send their number 2. And I was just like, you know what, if I let one person do it, then everybody's going to do it. Therefore, I got to hold the line at the founder CEO level. And I totally changed my position on it now because I'm like, you know, it's too important of an issue and we're not going to get it done. And I had the woman from the Muse, Kristen? Catherine.
Yeah.
And she told a great story where she said, like, listen, I went to a Y Combinator party 5 years ago and it was all men. And somebody came up to me and said, is your boyfriend a Y Combinator founder? She's like, was crestfallen, you know, like, well, no, I want to be a Y Combinator founder. I'm here because I want to apply.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like no role models. And everybody's just sort of, it's like unconscious bias and like directed at you.
Yeah.
It runs the gamut. I mean, not this event in October, but one not that far before it, there was a guy who thought it was appropriate to put his hand on my leg at dinner at an event I'm running.
What?
Yeah. I mean, this shit happens.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And you're just like, I'm walking away from this, right?
Yeah.
Like, and so it's out there and it happens, and I'm interested to hear what you guys want to do.
What do you think the solutions are going forward?
I think I'm curious because I've been reading your reactions to this, which I think are really insightful on this, around, you know, some of the structural challenges in the VC world, which is that like you just have this crazy time delay, right, between raising these new funds and it's such an apprentice-based business, and it's like the change in partnership, there's only so many slots to be able to make those choices over time. And it's like, you can either go through those systems or you can do what Kristen Green is doing, what Aileen Lee is doing, what other, I think, really interesting sort of role models in this ecosystem are doing, and build your own world. And, you know, Kanye had a collaborative fund and sort of like go and find people who believe in this from a diversity standpoint, think it's not only like important socially, but actually great business to get other perspectives around the table and just like create your own platform. And I mean, they've now got, I think, between the two of them, 100 million or more under management. Maybe 200 million between the two of them.
Yeah, it's in the piece I wrote, I did a big Twitter, like I asked multiple times on Twitter, like, what are the female founded funds? Not a female partner, but who founded their own. Yeah. And I found 9 for a total of like 800 million. Yeah. But I couldn't find Hummer Wimbledad and Wimbledad's actual number of funds. It is undisclosed. But it is kind of like Supreme Court justices, how these slots change. They like change over a lifetime, you know?
Right.
I think it's an interesting analogy. So like people know 10 years before it needs to change. But where are I think the rich women in the world who actually are LPs in the other funds, and I'm not going to call out specific names, but it's obvious who's a billionaire and who's a woman because there's a finite number of them as well. Those female billionaires need to fund female venture firms.
It's not just them, man. It's like, if you take a look at the LP, like the LPs drive a lot of the partnership dynamics. If there was a mandate from LPs to have that diversity, and more are doing that. I was talking to somebody, Catherine Blake from who runs the investor community for the World Economic Forum.
Yeah.
And there was a consortium of LPs who looked at diversity and said, this is going to be a priority for us, and start making those.
Well, that's the real game changer.
I think that's
first I've ever heard of that.
Those are the forcing functions that otherwise it takes like decades of apprenticeship and friendship and like partnership dynamic.
And you're not in my club ship.
Right, and you're not in my club.
That will change everything.
That shift, if you get LP down, and by the way, a lot of those LPs are driven by pension funds and worker funds that are frankly driven by a much more representative percentage of the population.
Right.
So
the entire population, taxpayers.
The entire population, right?
Taxpayers,
and so like, if you
Yeah.
have those LPs start to make those mandates, you see rapid shift, and new fund creation around those kinds of shifts would be the fastest game changer.
That would, so I think that would be my number one and number two game changers. Number one is women start more firms, and I think the second would be, wow, if the LPs said, we're not going to invest in funds anymore, or
shifted dramatically the allocation
just say,
strategy.
hey, LPs, in your next fund, we're looking for this, and then in 5 years, we're looking for this, and in 10 years, we're looking for this. We understand it's going to take time to find people, mentor them, whatever, but these are your targets. Because somebody, I'm not sure which country did this, but they said 50% of all boards have to be female. I forgot which country it is. Emmy Award-winning producer Jackie will look it up, but they're saying board positions are going to be, they're going to have some mandatory level of diversity on public boards in some countries, which is,
Do you think it would be helpful if we tried to do more like public shaming, if we just like kept beating this drum of like, where are the women on boards, or who are the firms that have no diversity in their partnership ranks?
Yeah, that is...
Sunlight's the best disinfectant, right?
Well, I think everybody knows. And so,
it would be like month after month with maybe one small change, right? Like it would be a slow process.
Like it's slow. I don't know. Like from a reporting standpoint, these partnership shifts happen once every 4 or 5 years, and so
there's a way to do it. I think I think there's a way to do it. I mean, if you did a leaderboard that was. These are the most diverse groups, and I would flip it. So instead of shaming, I would say these are the top most diverse groups, and you just did that as a reoccurring column where you talked about the changes. And instead of saying like these 10 firms are all white men, you would just say on a diversity basis, these are a ranking of the top 100 firms based on dollar amount and notability, and here's where they rank on diversity. And if let's say Andreessen Horowitz sees themselves as like number 100 every month, and you're talking about it in Recode, you can be sure that Ben Horowitz and Mark Andreessen are going to be very upset at you guys. It could create a war, or it could create positive change. So you have to be very careful with those techniques, I think, as a journalist, right? Because when are you a journalist and when are you an advocate?
Well, I mean, if you think about it like at the simplest level, discrimination means not picking the best candidate. Right? So you are shooting yourself in the foot by discriminating.
Okay.
So stop doing that, right? Like
I think we all agree on that. That opens another can of worms, which is if women have not been allowed to prove themselves as investors, and then you put up the benchmark of who's the best investor, you have a, sort of,
but that
nobody's been given the
Kleiner
opportunity.
Perkins. I mean, according to the testimony we heard, the women were outperforming the men.
No, I'm just saying on the onboarding, if you make the filter,
we can leave it.
Who are the best, right? Then
we have like how many?
The discussion, I think, about this topic is perhaps the most important of our lifetime. Well,
that's what I'm saying. Like, is there a chance to make a difference, right? And I don't want to be the annoying advocate of this, but I think that there's value in it by just saying something over and over again. So I'm trying to figure out how to parse that to say something where it's meaningful, where it's not just something you could ignore.
Here's a way to do it. Days since X firm has had a female founder. So if you know, this firm has never had a female founder, and they were founded in 2005, and they've been around for 10 years. They've had 3,650 days without a female partner. And you just keep a running count of how many days it's been since they got a female founder. I think that would speak massive volumes. And they might say like, hey, well, we had a female founder and she quit and she went here. And you go, okay, great. I'll just reset your clock. You're 1,000 days since a female partner.
Yeah. Okay.
That would, and I think you should do, as a journalist, I think it's a super important issue. I don't think it's, it would be like, if this issue were talking about political dissidents, and you said how many people are political dissidents in Libya or China, or in the Gulag in North Korea, nobody would bat an eye at that social issue and documenting it like Amnesty International does. And I worked at Amnesty, and that's what we did. We documented. The first project I worked on there was abuses of women, and I created the database of like, here's how many women in this country were raped or tortured. It's truly depressing work. If you just kept metrics on that, I think it's sunshine. But you don't want to get to the point at which it cuts off debate. So there's a way to talk about the positive, and then there's a way to kind of maybe even humor. Yeah. This humor is also a good way to sort of handle these things, I think.
John Oliver's doing an incredible job.
That's a good
really challenging, nuanced political topics and shedding light through humor.
Yeah. I think so. Yeah. All right, so let's go. So anyway, I wanted to say also thank you for doing that great coverage, by the way.
Thank you, Liz.
I really was watching literally every day.
Thank you.
And the live coverage, but did you get attacked a little bit by some people? You did one piece.
Oh yeah, we got attacked by everyone.
There was one piece where somebody attacked you.
We had both sides calling us, saying that we're biased.
That was because it seemed like it was very fair. You were quoting,
fair, right?
You were quoting people.
Isn't that the goal?
You were quoting people, and when there was one point where you were talking about like some part where Ellen's story did not match up to her, I guess, deposition testimony or something. And just the fact that you mentioned factually that the prosecutor did that, you were getting slammed.
Yeah. Well,
on Twitter.
The best way is to use people's own words, to have them paint their own case, right?
Right.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. It was good work. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about Meerkat and Periscope, which I don't know if our Periscope feed is.
Do you still have people in there?
Yeah, still 25 people in there.
25.
25. And we probably hit like
probably like 75 people have said, this is stupid, I'm leaving.
That's a scary group of 25 in there.
Exactly. So Meerkat, Periscope, not investor in either?
No. I mean, we invested in Twitter.
Right. So you have a shareholder in Twitter. So obviously.
Shareholder in Twitter. I love the team at Meerkat. Great team. Josh is a friend. Ben, the founder, is really smart. Like him a lot.
Why is this going to work this time? And I'll put that up to both of you because I remember Robert Scoble running around town with a Nokia N95
and just
doing this on
his back
Quick and Justin TV and everything. Kite. And it was terrible. And it was inspiring for like a month. And then it became kind of faddish because most people don't know how to perform when a camera's turned on. What do you think is going to happen this time around? Is it a fad or is it going to be sustainable?
Is live streaming a fad? No, I think the difference being today that you have like just like the iPhone revolutionized camera, you have everybody with LTE networks that have set in, social graphs that have been established. You have 3 billion smartphone users over the course of the last 4 years that have been effectively been added, or 2.5 billion that have been added. You have network density that is able to spread the word faster. And so you have people doing, I used to work with Ustream a lot when I was at CAA. And so we tried everything. We had, Obama inauguration, we had the Shiba Inu puppy cam, we had all of those things that were like just, at the time, like tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of viewers. And we're like, wow, that's really incredible. But now you have everybody with that potential. And so this is like the connected GoPro in your hand at all times. You can film literally anything. And I think a combination of that and the fact that we've gotten used to a couple things. The selfie cam has gotten normal for us. And so
you don't seem as egocentric. Like when Scoble did it, was like, yeah, of course Robert Scoble and Leo Laporte are going to do these things. They're broadcasters.
Weird. Yeah.
But now it seems like what I'm shocked about is it's a lot of VCs and civilians are doing it. Did you find that interesting, Liz?
Yeah, I mean, I've been loving kind of seeing what the possibilities are. I think that my theory going into it was that news and celebrity were going to be the only things that really mattered.
Yeah.
So I think what's interesting is like, do other categories of interesting emerge? Are there mean, on so many of these platforms, there's kind of self-made Vine stars or Instagram stars or whatever.
So we see Meerkat and
so
Periscopers.
Do you see that? Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that what I've been kind of pondering this week and interested in your guys' take on is just like, is mobile video like different than regular video? Because I think like mobile pictures are the same as regular pictures, but mobile video, like it's vertical, there's the commenting and the feedback and like, so I'm trying to start a column at Recode and I was thinking of working on that as the next one.
What do you think the difference is?
No question. There's tons of differences. Everything from like the intimacy of it. Like I think that's actually the most different that I've felt is, and I was one of the first people on Meerkat, first people on beta of Periscope, and have been playing with both a ton. And I think like the reason I was drawn to both platforms so close, so immediately was just like the level of empathy you get from like from now. Our experience has just been like FaceTime with your friends and family, and actually the closest people in your life, because you kind of don't want to FaceTime with everybody else. And these platforms feel like broadcast FaceTime in a way that I'm just holding somebody else's head in my hand in a like very intimate moment. And so
that's a really interesting observation.
It was like like the first ones that I ever did was actually like a date with my girlfriend on the couch. We were just eating sushi and talking about formats because she works for Shonda Rhimes in television, who's a big showrunner. And we were talking about what formats work for this. And it was all about like conversational, interactive, shout outs from the crowd. So we started doing, a buddy of mine is artist in residence at Spotify, D.A. Wallach. And we were just,
I know D.A., yeah.
D.A. is amazing. We went to college together. He's kind of like this weird artist slash philosopher slash investor. And so we were in his studio.
Sean Parker sidekick.
Sean Parker, he's a good friend of Sean's. And so like, and Elon's and a bunch of other interesting people. And so like we were in his studio and we were doing like, he was dropping a new album and he was playing, and I got people from the audience while we were streaming just throw out like genres of music that he should immediately shift into. And so he'd be playing his new song and we'd be like gospel or, jazz or whatever. And he'd just start immediately playing it. It was like a new form of content that I just had never seen before. And so you ask like, is mobile different? Absolutely. In terms of like being able, like we haven't yet had, even since Meerkat and Periscope launched, like a global moment that we've all tuned in for, but it feels like it's inevitable. And I don't know what it's going to be, but like
the space landing or the MASH finale.
I've joked about with friends, like Elon landing on Mars will not be like the moon landing where we sit in front of a screen. It'll be this intimate moment of all of us holding the screen in our face
and asking him questions.
And asking him questions, like he's immediately conversing with us. And like I don't know whether it'll be this interface or by that point like an Oculus VR style interface, but like what's different for me is the level of empathy and connectivity you have to this, in that it feels like friends. And so I do like a morning coffee with my girlfriend. We just like talk about the news and we talk about whatever we read. We talk about whatever we're talking, and we get like hundreds of people every morning who jump in and like have a conversation. And it's just, I could not be more bullish on live video. And
I have to say, the whole future of Twitter, I was on CNBC a couple of months ago, and I was just like, Twitter is going to triple in size because of video, because I had seen some of the inside stuff, like, in terms of uploading videos, and I'm like, oh my God, like, why would I
even support video until like very recent, like not just
10 weeks ago,
live video, like
video at all.
Periscope changes the game for them in a totally different way.
Yeah, the whole idea of live changes it, but then also like when you store the files are going to be stored at twitter.com/Liz Gannes /video. And that's going to be like your YouTube channel that you never took the time to set up.
Yeah.
And your videos are going to be there because your followers are there. And
but
you'll do a Q&A.
Drop friction so far. It's a button push and it's in your phone and you have a caster. The pack,
you don't need to have
that
a
Justin
director.
Kahn used to wear on him is like in every single human being's pocket. And so you're already tied to your graph. You don't have to set up a subscriber base. You've been working on it for years. You've been active in Twitter. Yeah. And it's like, again, it's more intimate than you've ever experienced and interactive. I think this is... But
so are you going to be a broadcaster now? Like, are you and your girlfriend going to keep doing this for years to come? I mean, like, think about, for me, like, the for some reason, the obvious comparison is, like, the whole mommy blogger evolution, right? So, like, there's all these people who use the publishing medium that was so easy and accessible, and they start writing about their lives, and then they developed followerships, and then they started getting sponsors, and now there's all these, like, sellout mommy bloggers who are getting sick of it and tailing off. And I don't know, I mean, I don't see this being that dramatically different, where, like, if you and your girlfriend are the stars of your own show, then you're going to have to deal with like what parts of your life do you want to share and what's off limits, and like who are you as a person? Are people in the street going to cost?
we were sitting
there'll be a constant refreshing of those people, though. As people burn out, 5 more will jump in.
Which is what happened in the YouTube ecosystem. Michelle Phan was like my first client ever, and Phil DeFranco, and so I watched that ecosystem grow from like when they had tens of thousands of subscribers.
That's a perfect parallel.
But I think like
Ray, what was the guy? Ray
William Johnson.
Yeah, I mean he was #1 for a while. He just gave up.
Yeah,
he quit.
I think it's like you do it as long as it's fun. For me, it's actually like I work from home, and so it's a great place for me to just like I read in the morning. I have this like moment where I'm just sitting there processing my thoughts. I write down a bunch of stuff, and then I have a conversation with like people from all over the world and talk about like here's a couple products I'm looking at. Here's stories of both of yours that I've read. Here's another product that somebody yesterday turned me on to from the cast. I find it to be like really cathartic. Like just it makes me feel. I wrote the other day that it just like makes the internet feel.
What was that word you use?
Concurrency?
Concurrency. What does this mean?
Just the idea that like
That's not a real word.
No, concurrency.
Concurrency is a word.
Yeah, concurrency is a word.
I thought you made up a word though.
No, I didn't.
Oh, okay.
But the thesis was just like the internet feels lonely. Even with social, it's asynchronous, and so you never know if somebody else is there at the same moment. And so you might be reading a story, you might be posting a photo, and you get this dopamine hit when you get a like or a comment. And a lot of people wait there for this moment of the like or comment. But you never know like who's out there at the same time. It's almost like this like black box. You don't know is somebody else on the other side of that black box at the exact same moment. Are we watching the same thing at the same time? And nobody has evolved on that. And you get a sense by walking down the street that we're all like this on our phones at all times. And so you know anecdotally that we're all connected to the screen, the same network, same sites. Like
it's really interesting.
The traffic is there, like, but you don't know which of your friends.
Waze is actually a good.
Waze is exactly this for mapping,
that's
right?
Concurrency.
You looked at Google Maps, you were like, I don't know which of my friends are going where, but Waze is concurrency.
Yeah, now on Waze, I'm like, you know what? Is there a way I can just turn off all these lookity-loos? Like, it's annoying. I use Google Maps now because they have the Waze data in it.
Yeah.
I don't want to see Taco Bell and all this other people.
The only advertising.
The insight is that like we're all doing this at all times. Our connected hours are nearly 24 hours. Like my time to phone in the morning is 10 seconds. Your time to phone is probably less because you're even more on it than that. And so like
that's not true. I wake up.
I don't believe it. I don't believe you have a moment of zen.
Make my daughter breakfast. I give the dogs a walk. I don't touch it for an hour.
But what I will say is like
that phone.
You have like we're all there at the same time, and when you go live and you have 25 people live watching, it feels like it's a campfire or a seat next to you, and that seat is like owned by everyone, and so that's why.
I don't know what to. Sorry.
No, nail it. No, that's it.
I don't know what to Periscope, right? So like so far, the only thing I Periscoped was the press conference after the Kleiner trial, which was newsworthy.
Yeah.
And that was newsworthy before Periscope existed, and it still was when it happened. But but then I was at the dog park on Sunday, and I was like, like maybe this will be my Periscope moment. And then I was like, oh, but it would be really weird if I was just like facing my camera at all these people. Like it's not in the privacy of my, I haven't asked them to sign consent forms. Okay, maybe I'm overthinking it. But like what, I don't know that I think it's a good thing that we're all walking around the world looking at our phones all the time. Like, I don't know that I want to like translate to like, let's do it together.
Isn't it better though that if we're looking at the phone,
we're doing it together?
Well, we're doing it together. It actually, I kind of feel like it adds a level of humanity to it.
Yeah.
And I think we're kind of like lost a little bit of the humanity. I think it's really interesting to think about the like or the retweet button. Mm-hmm. If 50 people retweet something or star something you do, you're like, I got 50 retweets. I'm like, whatever, 25 retweets. But then you think about it, like if I packed this room in the studio with 25 people and they all were like, if 25 people came up to me like, I really liked your story in a row, I would be like, oh my God, I'm so touched.
Right.
We're just immune to the fist bump and the retweet, but this makes it so much real.
I live streamed. So when it first came out, I just wanted to do some experiments. I live streamed a puppy adoption, just because near my house there's this amazing group, Dogs Without Borders, that does these puppy adoptions. On a Sunday afternoon, I set it up, and this is like week 1 of the platform, so nothing had been launched, and I started live streaming. 500 people on a Sunday afternoon talking about dog adoption. Wow. 500. And so like it felt crazy intimate. It was just my sister, my girlfriend, and a couple friends who like came and hung out. And like if I told you like, hey guys, on a Sunday afternoon I'm going to talk to you about animal adoption, no one would have signed up to come to that. But because of this platform, it made it really interesting. And so your question about formats I think is really interesting. Like every social platform has built native creators that know how to use the platform, use it in their own nuanced way. Right now we're seeing a lot of like radio on television, like a lot of people just live streaming your webcam and like stuff that used to be webcamable. And what I think you're going to see is like really interactive, fun new mediums come out of this. And it's hard to live stream. Be entertaining for an hour is hard.
Yeah, keep it to 10 minutes.
keep it to 10 minutes. I think it's actually
No. I'm saying you guys keep it to 10 minutes. I mean, I'm a professional broadcaster.
I do it for an hour and a half, and what I find is it's like all other social platforms, the content value degrades, right? You put a tweet out there, your interactivity happens like this. With live streaming, it's different.
You're a major extrovert. What is your ENTJ?
Yeah.
Myers-Briggs.
Yeah.
And you're like E, like you're what, like an 80% E?
I'm hardcore
90. Do you know your percentage?
I don't actually.
It's off the charts.
I know. People, yeah.
You know what you could do?
You know, people make you pay for that.
With live streaming, it grows. With live streaming, as the crowd grows, more people come and more people
I see what you're saying.
It's like busking on a street.
You're an INTP. Liz.
You know,
when was the last time you took it? INTP?
I took it in high school and I was also ENTJ, but I don't believe that yet.
I think you're INTP.
You don't believe that?
I'm like one of those weird.
Do you make lists?
Introvert extroverts or extrovert introverts or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You know what you might be?
Do I make lists? No.
Okay, you might be. Yeah, I think you're INTP. You know what I think you should do? You should, when you're writing a story, like the question you asked before was fascinating. Like, how do I keep this issue alive? With should I shame people? Should I make how do I have change without I'm a journalist, like all that. That's a really interesting discussion. Whatever the discussion you're having over drinks or in the office by the water cooler, that's the thing you write about. That's the thing you talk about.
Yeah.
That I made a career on that. I always the way I made my career was whatever people were talking about at the bar at 1 a.m. That's what I wrote about the next day. That was my trick as a journalist. And when I wrote the Mansplaining the Ellen Pao thing, I was like going back to my roots, which is everybody.
You're already talking about it.
It's talking about this. Nobody's written it. That's what I want to write.
Yeah.
Smart. And that's what you could do is talk about whatever it is that people are talking about and you could actually use those people as sources, as quotes, right? Like that would be a very fascinating thing to do, is to carry on that conversation and don't publish it. Just save the video for yourself.
What does that mean?
You can archive the videos, I think.
You know what I'd love to see, Liz, is actually like, I think like you have this initiation moment. Like every time you start a story, you initiate a great conversation, right? And people go out and it feels like, I read Liz's story. Did you read it? You talk about it at dinner. Like I can't wait for the moment that you go out there and take one of these incredibly researched topics and then spend an hour or 2 hours after the fact with sources and with people in your office and just have the debate live and have people chime in like, hey guys, read this. And then we're going to talk about it for an hour and a half. And so it turns the story into, like, when you put out a story, your viewership goes like this, right? It's really high and it decays. Like what I think you can do is take advantage of this moment and boost it even higher by keeping a conversation going live.
It's interesting what you're saying. Like I would love if there was a way to create a good, interesting internet discussion, right? And so I think that so far comments have largely been a failure.
Totally.
And they've in fact inspired behavior that is worse online than offline, right?
Oh my God, the trolling is atrocious.
So is there a possibility from what you're saying, and I'm not trying to be like more of a techno-optimist than the stance you're already taking,
I'm the most techno-optimist.
I know. So here, extending what you're saying, like maybe this is actually an environment where you could have a real conversation with people and add to it, because I think I've gotten to the point now, having written on the internet for so long, where like I'm psyched if I get an interesting and well thought through comment, but I don't expect it even anymore.
Here would be like, let's experiment, because that's what this is all about. Like next time you write a story, write the story, pre-announce the story and say, I'm going to be live on Periscope and I'm going to do an hour and a half conversation about this story that I'm about to release. Please read it and come with thoughtful conversation.
Because you can book them ahead of time.
You book them ahead of time.
You
announce it, and then you go and do the conversation afterwards. And I want to, just as an experiment, I think what you'll create is like an hour and a half long video format that people will, everybody's talking about what your video strategy is. Tie it to there's so much research that doesn't hit the article.
There's another one. When you're doing your search for speakers and topics, do that. Hey, I'm looking for I'm going to do a topic discussion for Code Mobile.
You're seeing this as a brainstorming tool.
I use it for product jams for sure.
I think it's like a jamming tool for sure, which is what I use Twitter for a lot. So like the reason the Launch Festival is become 12,000 people is because I'll do things on Twitter like say, what company should I give a free table to that's doing something amazing but has no funding? Yeah. And literally from around the world, I'll get 50 replies, and then I go to Emmy Award-winning producer Jackie or researcher John, and I'm like, he's got no Emmys.
I think
and
the difference is like to be credible in this kind of like going back to this 360, in this 360-degree environment that we're on, you can't just like present your one side for the public audience. You can't just say like, here's my finished product. You have to say like, here are the angles, the bevel on it, like here's the rest of it.
Right. Yeah.
And so, and you, the reason you're so successful at doing these conferences is because you believe it so strongly that even when you look at you from the back, you're still believing it, right?
Right.
Actually, that's, I think, another interesting point about live streaming that people haven't sort of caught on to, which is
authenticity is the word I would use.
Yeah, you're right.
There's no ghostwriter for live streaming. Like, you can't fake your personality.
No Benedict Evans?
You can't.
Benedict Evans?
Whoa.
What's that?
Oh, you guys don't know?
Oh, no.
Oh, sorry.
There's no.
I was supposed to say that.
There's no ghostwriter.
Oh, you didn't know that Benedict Evans wrote Mark Andreessen's tweets? You didn't know that?
I don't know what that means.
That's
what?
Fun. No,
Benedict Evans writes Mark Andreessen's tweets?
I don't know if that's true.
It's not true. I'm just trying to spread a meme.
Okay, that's a good meme. No, the idea being that, like, I think we're actually at a Nixon-Kennedy moment with what's going to happen in 2016 is that, like, you can't have a speechwriter be live with you.
Right, you can't have your social media team.
Yeah, I can't wait
there's no
for
filter.
Rand Paul and McCain and Hillary.
But it's like if you're a suit and you're on there reading teleprompters or have tons of speechwriters, or you have no personality except for a 5-minute canned commercial or a 30-second.
No
commercial.
presidential candidate will use this. That's my prediction. Which candidate?
I call BS on that.
Okay, here we go.
I think
now we got a bet.
No presidential candidate. What do you want to bet?
Here's everything.
Jeb Bush has already done it. You're wrong. I already win.
Here's the thing. Unfiltered questions coming in.
You're wrong. It's going to happen.
Okay.
It's going to. This is the Kennedy Nixon moment. You can't hide it.
All right, here we go.
The most intimate.
I'm not talking about the also-rans. I'm talking about the two presidential candidates.
Won't live stream?
Hillary McCain will not Meerkat or Periscope because there will be unfiltered comments coming in. So the bet is, I'm going to set the bet. The bet is neither the Republican or the Democratic candidates in the election, the actual election.
You don't want the runoffs.
No, the runoffs, of course, they're going to, the bottom of the barrel people are going to obviously do anything they can to try to get.
I mean, these products need to work a lot better before this happens.
No, you're both, I'll take this bet.
And I think it'll be Hillary and who? Who's going to be the Republican?
Could be Jeb.
Okay. Neither Hillary or Jeb.
That's so depressing.
It is.
Same last names.
Yeah, it's almost like the sequels. We have sequel culture on.
We do love sequels.
We do love sequels.
So, finish your bet.
Fast and Furious.
Neither of them will Meerkat during the primary election. Not the.
They won't. Is
that called the primary? Is it the primary election when they?
They won't live stream.
Meerkat or
Scope.
Oh no, you don't.
They won't scope. They won't Scope or Meerkat.
Correct.
During the general
You're wrong.
election.
Okay, so what's the bet? Let's go.
I don't know. Okay.
All right, here we go. Sushi dinner.
Sushi dinner. Whoever's picked, you can pick. Either one can pick.
Okay, uncapped. All right, how about this? Capped at $700 a head, and Liz is included.
Done.
Ooh, it's even more painful.
All right, by that time, hopefully, I'm not a working journalist. You can only accept $50
Looks like, by the way, I'm a sushi fiend, so you just got screwed.
You can't accept it. God damn it.
That's all right. Well, that's all right. I'll come watch the live stream.
You can come hang.
All right. Fine.
You have Tidal on here too, which is interesting.
Oh yeah, that's a good topic for an LA guy.
Anything else you guys want to mention here?
Tidal.
So I didn't realize
it's Jay-Z's launch.
Oh my God,
that was cool.
All right, go ahead. I have my own thoughts on that.
Oh, you have your own thoughts.
Did you listen to
my very uninformed thought? Yeah, I watched the video. Is that I didn't realize that Tidal was such an awkward word until this happened because it's like Tidal, but then when you say it, like you were like, "What's that?" Tidal. Yeah, it's like a very strange word to say.
Tidal.
Yeah, I don't think it's a good brand.
Okay, no, not a good brand.
Okay, anyways.
Thoughts on the product or business or the decision?
I think it's going to be really hard to build a product without a product, right? Like they have the artists, but not. They have half of it, right?
No, they have the product too. The product's launched. They have a streaming subscription service with high fidelity audio.
So I think we're all going to be screwed as music customers for like the next 5 years while they figure this shit out because we're going to have to subscribe to like 4 different things so we can get all the music we want to listen to. It's already.
You think it's bad for consumers?
Oh wait, are they?
Yes, it's bad.
Are they going to be exclusive to Tidal?
There's some tracks that are exclusively on Tidal.
Isn't that kind of shitty that like now I'm going to have to like buy my one album here and then I'll be out running and have to remember which app to use?
You have your thoughts?
I want to hear.
You want to hear my thoughts?
I'm
I thought the reaction was awesome. You saw everybody in the world be like, "This is terrible. It's DOA." And then talking out the other side of their mouth, as somebody who's spanned between LA and SF and worked with talent for 8 years, there was always this criticism, like, artists will never understand distribution. They keep giving away the keys of distribution to everybody else, and they're doing it. They're doing it, and they're just taking short-term licensing fees. And these guys, every single one of those artists could probably get paid way more for giving exclusivity to another platform. And instead of taking this huge risk,
they're doing it together.
They're doing it together, but they're all launching it on this platform. And for the first time, you have a bunch of musicians who are trying to own the full stack of distribution, which is what I find most interesting. And they think that they're like, screw business model. It's like $20 for high fidelity. Are people going to know what FLAC files are and be able to tell lossless audio versus audio codecs versus non-lossless audio codecs? I'm not convinced. Most people can't. Even great audiophiles can't. But what's interesting to me is they've taken a first stab, created a very interesting working product. The playlists are actually great on there. And most importantly, it's like, where do they go from here? I think there's a lot of things in the music industry that are totally screwed, from like the rights management to being able to remix to being able to share. Yeah. And like right now it's just live streaming, but all the things that you can build on the back of this, from what now that you own and have the artists aligned in the full stack, from like conception to distribution to rights management, and then to being able to do social sharing, remixing, like, and maybe even splitting back. I actually had an idea for the Tidal guys. I was going to reach out. Just the idea of being able to remix, or being able to like compensate curators, a la what happened back in the DJ days, and have formalized curation so you actually care about creating playlists on Tidal, which doesn't exist on other platforms, because there's a free option and not just a paid option.
If people subscribe to Tidal after playing my playlist, I get the month.
You could get a percentage of that.
Get a vig, yeah.
Like there's models that they can do now because they own the full stack of content that I think are fascinating. So does it win? I don't know. Is it crowded and complicated? Yes. Do I find it awesome that artists are finally owning full stack and building product? No question. I think that alone should be applauded.
Okay. Now, let me explain what a disaster this is.
Oh.
Okay, number one.
But that's not even a contrarian take.
I know. Mainstream. I'm the contrarian. I'm the techno optimist.
I do think.
And you're the VC.
I said like a year ago when the whole Spotify Taylor Swift thing happened that Taylor Swift was absolutely doing the right thing of blocking the services and having millions of albums sell, and that if she had venture capital backing instead of a record label, that would be a better way to pursue her business. And so what I think you're seeing here now is the artists going from indentured servitude and just selling themselves to owning the business. And this is going to then move into like the Live Nation stuff, probably, like with live concerts when Jay-Z's contract expires. And he's basically using Live Nation's whatever, $300 million or whatever they gave him to buy this company. So it is definitely has the potential to be a watershed moment. And even if it fails, they might have another swing at it. But here's the thing. I'm an expert on launching products. And on the stage, this was the worst press conference ever. It seemed narcissistic, clueless.
It looked like LeBron decision to a lot of people.
It is
I heard that
perfect analogy, whoever came up with that. It was clueless. They got up on stage and they said, we are going to be liberated. You're joining a movement, and you are going to pay us $20 for what you're currently paying $8 for, and we are all going to sign the Declaration of our Independence. And it was like, you're all billionaires and hundreds of millionaires. We're not feeling sorry for you.
This is why you think it's a disaster?
Because
of a bad press conference?
That's your criticism, I'll tell you something.
Jason?
It's a product. They didn't show the product. They didn't talk about the product's value proposition. They didn't talk about who's being absolutely liberated.
You're declaring failure because of a launch party.
No, it's not a party. It's a launch announcement. And if you can't get that right, if you can't get it right, you need to get up on stage and say, Hi, I'm Jay-Z, and today I would like to tell you about Tidal. Tidal is going to give you all of your favorite artists, of course, at a very reasonable $8. But if you pay $18, we're going to give you every day 3 tracks from your favorite artists. Let me bring some of them up. And they're going to make music that is only available on this platform, and you're going to get an extra 1,000 tracks a year that are only available, and we're running it. So you can be sure that we're going to give you the most creative, great stuff. Let me bring out some of my friends, and we're going to play some music that we did. And here's Madonna doing
100% agree. It wasn't done with any humility. It wasn't done. Hey, clueless. Help us think about this. But that doesn't mean. Okay, so like,
who's running it? Who's the CEO? Are you going to go up against Spotify?
I want to meet him.
That's what I want to know. Who's going to go up against Daniel Ek?
But it's not just about like the technology in my mind. It's like technology plus all of these other product features that you can build. I don't think there's any artist exclusive that will make this product sing, but I do think there is alignment that you can do because music's so complex and complicated that they will be able to do in a way that maybe no other technology platform can, because artists will be bought into new forms of sharing that are actually happening off of all of these platforms. YouTube's the listening platform du jour because
SoundCloud.
you can remix the shit out of it and do all these kinds of SoundCloud, and because kids are doing karaoke jams.
Who's the loser in all of this? Who loses? Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube? Who's the loser?
Us. Music listeners.
No.
Why?
Why?
Because, like I said, like when next time I go running and I have to, on the fly, think of which platform has which song that I want to go listen to.
Yeah, that's true.
And have I paid them that month? And
I know,
do I have the right tier for whatever window
Rhapsody?
they put on?
Yeah, I love Rhapsody.
Wow.
It's just bogus.
Categorization system.
Are you on Hotmail too?
No, I've always had Rhapsody.
Are you full stack?
Great
90s?
organization, yeah. Full stack. I get my Windows 95. I get my Rhapsody client up. I got to move to Spotify.
I think you're wrong on that. I think it's I think you're right on the launch, but you didn't actually talk about the product at all. So.
But you haven't responded to my point.
Which is what? Sorry, the consumer loses.
Yeah.
I think these are platforms that like. You had the option of iTunes. Like, I think it'll actually, a lot of these artists will be on multiple platforms long term. Mm-hmm. I think this is fine. Like, I don't think they're actually like restricting anything long term. I think you'll eventually get those tracks elsewhere. We've had windowing and exclusivity in most forms of media. I think this is, and by the way, this isn't the only place it's happening. It's happening in like Blaze and Glenn Beck owning full stack distribution. Yep. It's happening with Michelle Phan and Icon Network and owning full stack distribution. Mm-hmm. I think it's
full stack distribution means what? Explain that.
Meaning, like, I think what you used to have is like artists used to create and then they leave marketing and distribution of that content and audience feedback and monetization to third parties, whether that be exhibitors or a studio infrastructure or a network. You had layers between all of them, and now what you had, we called it over the top. You had like YouTube creators going direct to their fans. YouTube was still creating that distribution for them and like monetizing for them and giving them a red split back. And you didn't have to think about building a social graph or any of the technology underlying it. And now enough of that technology is being commoditized that you're having artists who actually are trying to do the full integrate. Like, you have Glenn Beck taking his 2 million viewers, converting it to 3 million viewers on 300,000 viewers online, selling it for $10 a month, and now he's making $30 million a year as opposed to $2 million. I don't know. These are all rough numbers, so don't quote me.
Yeah, but like what you're really, another way from saying full stack is that everyone has to be an entrepreneur, right? They have to, they're selling, they're not just making something, they're selling it to, and they're creating the way to get to people. And they're responsible for the whole system.
You can't get away with just creating the audience and then or creating the content and then renting audience elsewhere. The long-term value is actually in like having direct connection and being responsive to it, right? Like actually knowing, this is why BuzzFeed's incredible, right? Is they're so responsive to the content. This is why Netflix is incredible, is they're so responsive to their audience and can create content.
Yeah, they're like, you like Orange is the New Black, and Laura Prepon was leaving next season, and everybody complains. They're like, Laura Prepon's back.
Like the winners in this marketplace are the ones who are engineers with data.
They got her back
and
for more
creatives.
episodes. Like
yeah, I mean, I'm concerned that there's like the losers in this are like the true artists who only make things in caves and the introverts, right? Like
that's possible.
Because just because you can't sell something doesn't mean that you're not good at making something.
There's a movie called The Artist. Do you remember the movie The Artist?
Yeah.
Gerard Desjardins, he's like in this. It's all about like a silent film star moving to the talkie world, and he's like, my audience doesn't pay me to talk; they pay me to act. And you immediately know that he's like an anachronism, like in that second.
Yeah.
And you see the whole world pass by, and the ingenue who's like his subordinate becomes the star because she finds the audience where it is. That's what's happening today. And if you don't build the tools around distribution as well, I think you miss, because it's not just distribution, it's interactivity that people are craving.
It is. It's just that so much of that interactivity is crap, though. Like when I see these like YouTube stars talking about how much they love their fans, like the best value add that they get from their fan is someone saying like, I love you, right? Like it's not like they have a real conversation.
You know who to look at? Taylor Swift.
Okay.
What she did with this new album, where she did listening parties with people she found on Tumblr, and then she went around Tumblr.
Like, do you think Taylor Swift gets to have interesting conversations with people?
Yes.
You think?
I absolutely think that she is so in touch with her fans. Like and I'm sure some of it's staged in PR-y, but I think that's actually authentically who she is that she wants to be close to the fans. So like she was going running in the park.
They're not fans.
They're friends, right? They're friends. And so she was like going running in the park. Somebody was like getting their picture taken, and she did a whole photo shoot with them. Yeah. She had all these people, and she would say like, I'll drop by your house. I'll play you the songs on my guitar, whatever. Yeah. And then we took a bunch of Polaroids. Don't tell anybody. And we're going to put the Polaroids in the package where we sell the things. Mm-hmm. Cool. And it's like this whole like so accessible
Yeah.
and no room between the
Yes.
artist and these other companies
Yes.
to manipulate who they are. And I think you'll see like Madonna did that, and she stayed true to her art. U2 was able to do that.
Yep.
And I think this whole next generation is going to be like, I'm going to do me.
Michelle Phan is this to like the extreme. When Michelle travel, like, and there, again, I used to be around artists all the time, and you'd see some artists would push back against doing PR. Like, they'd just be like, the last thing I want to do is go and travel the world and do PR. And the ones who were like way ahead of it built audiences. Like Will Smith and Tom Cruise would travel all over the world and build audiences.
Shake everybody's hands.
Tom knew every person's name like on the floor back at CAA, and he was just that person. And like Michelle, when she travels the world, is like, people don't like when some people see artists and celebrities, they kind of like step back, right? Like it's like a little bit of an awe moment. You kind of feel separated from them. Travel with Michelle or any of the YouTubers, and they come up and hug, and it's like,
it's pretty wild. I was at that VidCon
for years. VidCon is the best. I did one of the earliest speeches, like one of the earliest VidCons, and I spoke there. And you watch kids wait in line for hours, and it's not like they're coming over to like get a signature. They want like.
It's a deep level of intimacy.
They've been there in an intimacy that you just didn't understand, and that's what people crave, is like connection. And that's why reality TV was an interesting movement, and why this is an extension of that, and why I think live streaming is like the next evolution of that, because it's the most intimate you've ever felt with like an audience.
I would just like it if it would step up a notch because I think that a lot of these are like, maybe it's not a signature, but now it's a selfie, right? Like a lot of these are really...
the selfie is the autograph, right?
Yeah.
Somebody else wrote that recently.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. It's like, but I think a lot of these interactions are so simple, and like I would love if the live stream movement creates like a more rich conversation. That would be great.
It is.
I have a new move. This is my new power move.
Oh, you got one?
In my own micro celebrity.
Okay.
Because I get stopped on the street here fairly often, like a couple times a day, and people say, I like the show, Sokka is my favorite episode. I always ask people the favorite episodes. So now what I do is when people come up, they're like, "Oh, I love your show." I'm like, "Oh, that's great to meet you. You have a favorite episode?" I say, "Hey, can we take a selfie?" And they're like, "I was about to ask you that." I'm like, "Yeah, let's do it." And I take it out and I tweet it. Because I'm like, I know they're going to ask. And so if I just say, I want to take a selfie, it totally diffuses the whole awkwardness. And now we're just in a conversation. And like this happens like in the men's room. Like I'm on the regular being followed into men's rooms at Y Combinator in the men's room being pitched.
You promised you'd never tell anybody about that.
I was like, you know what, Matt? You'll be on This Week in Startups when you're ready.
Okay.
You'll be on the show when you're ready, and that is today. You did a great job.
Thank you, good sir.
Matt Mazzeo finally made it onto This Week in Startups.
By the way, can I just say for the audience that when I started in this world at CA and started doing the digital coverage, the first conference I ever got allowed to travel to was your
TechCrunch 40?
TC40.
Yeah, the first one.
And I was sitting in that audience. I remember like coming up to you. You were, I was like 24. I don't even know at the time, 25. And
it was 8 years ago.
It was 8 years, so 24. And I remember coming up to you and just being like, this was the best education I've ever gotten in this industry. And I've been to, I think, every single one since.
Yeah.
And got to speak this year at the Product Hunt stage.
You did great,
I've been watching this show for a long time. Just, it was an important moment in my arc. So,
that's very sweet of you to say. Like, it's interesting. Like, I had Ryan, speaking of Product Hunt, on from Product Hunt.
He's been watching forever, too.
And he's watched every episode.
Yeah.
And he was like, I think he was in college or high school when he started watching the show. And now he was on the show a bunch of times, and he was like, it's kind of very surreal for me to be on the show when I'd watched it for so long. I think it's like very cool.
It is cool.
Legacy-wise, like...
He's done a few now, right?
He's been on, he's in my Young Guns group. I have like the Young Guns group. So I have Danielle Morel from Mattermark and him on, because I was trying to get some younger people on just to like have that 20-something vibe for a little bit and see how they did. And they did good.
Yeah, they did.
All right, Liz Gannes, amazing job on, again, all the Recode coverage of the Ellen Pao, Kleiner Perkins trial. Exceptional job. I mean, really, have you thought about writing a book for it? Because I think you would have, there's a book offer in this for you.
What book would you want to read?
Well, here's the thing. The best books are the ones that the author feels compelled to write. That's true. So I think what I sense in you, we know each other fairly well, I think. I sense in you that this is a very important personal issue for you, in addition to you writing it as a journalist. And I think actually you taking the time to tell the story and fill in the gaps, but then also your own perception and how your perception changes over time about this issue would be like the real win. It's almost like I have to think about the memoir, but Devil Wears Prada or How to Lose Friends and Alienate People, it's about something else,
right?
But really very personal about the person and their experience, right? So your experience covering it, your emotions, your feelings on it, I think would be fascinating to read what a journalist actually experienced. It must have been emotional for you at times. Was it, as a woman, emotional?
I will say that I did not think that women in tech was my issue. In fact, I remember, approaching a woman who was very outspoken about this and just saying, like, I'm interested that this is so important to you because I just don't think it's my issue. This was more than a few years ago. But I think that when you see how much this resonates, it's like really hard to let go of that response, the response that you get. I mean, it's funny. It's like our whole conversation comes back to that, right? The authenticity of the moment and the real interaction.
Yeah. I could tell it hit you. Like what was the moment like when you heard the verdict? Was it, I'm trying to think as a woman and as a journalist, trying to separate those two roles that you have, one as a human and how you might personally feel about this issue, the meta issue, the micro issues, and then doing your job. What was it like when you heard the verdict?
It was like getting to, the readout of what it all meant, right? Because we had no visibility into the jurors who were the people who really mattered and what they thought. It was just limited glimpses of what they were working on, what was going on in their minds until that moment.
Right.
So I think for me, it wasn't that big of a surprise. I think it would have been a big upset if she won. I don't think that the case that she presented was, cohesively convincing. But that doesn't mean that I didn't think that the trial itself brought up worthwhile issues.
Were you disappointed with the verdict? Or conflicted, I guess, maybe?
I think that no, I was not. The jury was asked to decide something very specific, and the case was very specific, right? So even though we want it to be this kind of cultural touchstone moment, I guess that's my hesitancy in thinking about it as a book, is it's like this helped filter and sustain and provoke a conversation, but it in itself was not the perfect moment, right? And but no moment is perfect. Just like we're talking about, no plaintiff is perfect, no moment is perfect, no trial is perfect. But I'm interested to see where things are going now, and the glimpses that I've gotten of what was happening behind the scenes have been very interesting too.
Really, what was the most interesting?
I can't talk about it.
Oh, really? What do you mean behind the scenes glimpses? Like,
just hearing now what happened from people who were on the stand, people who were in the jury.
Wow.
I write about what I can talk about, but their discussions internally. Yeah, or what was going on with the lawyers, things like that. So I think there still is more material there.
And thank you for sharing that. What is the outcome of the legal bills? Because I haven't heard resolution on that or any discussion. Is Ellen Pao now liable for some of Kleiner's, or could Kleiner come and sue her and just will elect not to, because that would look really, really harsh?
Yeah. As I understand it, Kleiner Perkins offered a certain amount that beyond that amount that she would pay, and I don't exactly understand the way that works legally, but essentially it comes down to is she would pay their expert legal witness fees rather than their lawyer fees. Right. I would not want to pay their lawyer fees. They had an army of lawyers in there every day.
Good ones, apparently.
Great, yeah. I
mean, that really woman who, the closing argument, based on reading it, was, wow.
Kleiner Perkins had a great legal team. They had the superior legal team.
If the legal teams were reversed, do you think it would have changed the decision?
Actually, one of the jurors said that to us, that they thought that it might have flopped if it was the other team.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
And she's on the hook for that legal bill with her lawyers, I wonder?
Yeah.
Or maybe they were on contingency.
Yeah, but it was for 3 years.
A contingency for 3 years? Or
it would have been. I mean, they worked on, at least the main one worked on the case.
What was the motivation of that firm who...
This was incredibly, so we're going back to this.
Yeah.
This was incredibly high profile in this industry. Like, it was funny when you looked around who was in the court, it was not just the tech industry people. It was like everyone in employment law in the Bay Area was coming to see like the top 3 lawyers in their fields go to court, because this stuff never goes to trial.
It's a Super Bowl.
It is. It was totally for them. This stuff always settles. So to see 3 lawyers who are really well respected play out actually in person was a big deal for people.
And now that firm has clients at Facebook and Twitter?
Facebook. One of her firms. Yeah. So they definitely came out well.
Right. They're going to get more clients, take more cases.
Yeah. And a lot of people feel that this larger issue of unconscious bias will be litigated, and maybe by them.
Yeah. How do you think history will view her, Ellen Pao?
Well, the thing is, she has a really good job, right? Like, she's not just about the trial. She's also the CEO of Reddit, one of the most interesting and...
top 20 site in the world, right?
Yeah, and just like really unclear what's going to happen with it next. So I think she has she's going to write a lot of her story by figuring out what to do with Reddit.
And she's, I think, coming out swinging now. Like, she did this Wall Street Journal story. I mean, she is not a shrinking violet today. Like,
no.
She may have been prior.
She can't talk yet about the trial because they haven't fully settled everything. Yes. But once they figured all that stuff out... I think she's going to be
a very public figure, don't you?
I think so. I mean, she can't help it be, and really.
But I mean, she could elect to not talk about it.
Shrinking from the light.
Yeah, she could just say, "Listen, I don't want to comment on it. You know, I said what I had to say in my,
No, she's now at the forefront of this cause, which is
she's
larger
engaging
than herself. Yeah.
Do you think that cause and the Reddit male-dominated, somewhat small contingent of trollish, misogynistic, Gamergate-ish, whatever. I don't know exactly what percentage it is. I mean, it's an open platform, so who knows?
Right.
Is it compatible? Because now it seems like she is starting to rein in the things that were never reined in under the previous male leadership.
Right. I mean, Reddit is obviously a site that is in need of some overhauls, right? Like, it looks like it was designed 10 years ago because it was, right?
Yeah.
So, and making changes to a place where people feel like they live is not easy. So, I mean, if there's one thing I think is pretty sure is that there's going to be Reddit backlash against whatever she does. And if it's, put it in a new font or stamp out crazy misogynistic trolling, both of those will have people who hate it.
I'm glad that she made the case against revenge porn on there. And that other scumbag got 18 years or 20 years. Did you see that?
What's that?
There's a revenge porn guy who was running a site and he got the book thrown at him for extortion. And it was like, finally. People understand that there is a set of laws and behavior that we've got well established in society, and one of them is extortion. And if you put people's, naked pictures online and tell them, pay me money to take them down, it's extortion. And he's going to jail forever.
Yeah.
And I don't think jail's going to be very pretty for him at all.
No.
Not pleasant. Anyway, this has been an amazing episode. Write the book, Liz, honestly. There's a book in this. Like, this could be, in terms of your career, I think that this is obviously the peak to date. Writing a book on this, do not lose the opportunity to be the person. And just for the people who are out there, my book agent, other book agents, if you don't sign her to do a book now, you're insane, because there's only 2 or 3 people who covered it to this level and have the access you have. And there needs to be 2 or 3 books on this.
Yeah.
You could write the Ellen Pao story and the whole gender story. You could start with this, and then you could actually make it into a bigger story about Ellen and a bigger story about the other people involved. Wow, so many possibilities. Anyway, everybody follow at Liz Gannes. Everybody follow Recode. Everybody go to recode.net. Everybody follow Mazzeo, Mazzeo, and get his amazing 90-minute breakfast sessions.
I am looking forward to that.
I cannot wait to watch Mazzeo. What do you have for breakfast? A little Greek yogurt?
I do.
A little honey and granola?
Coffee in the mornings.
Just coffee, that's it, huh?
Yeah, I'm pretty boring.
It's that LA lifestyle. Svelte, staying svelte in LA. I like it. Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, Jacob, for putting up with 100 minutes of show.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jason.
Hey, thanks.
Thank you, Liz.
To Snap Terms and
it's good to hang.
Scott, Ed Walker, and everybody knows. Thank you, WeWork, for my studio. Appreciate that too. Bye-bye.